Hey everybody, and welcome to Stock Abilities. I'm going to be covering a lot of stock earnings plays coming into the upcoming week, all the different reports that are going to be going on. Conveniently, the week before elections. It's a very busy week. We got Amazon, Facebook, Apple, all these big tech companies reporting all in the same week. So it's going to be a very volatile week for those playing and trading this upcoming week here. And we're going to go break them down. Feel free to leave in the comments below your own input on which earnings you think is going to do the best, which ones you're watching. But we're going to hop into it here. I'm going to go one by one here. Twilio has been kind of on a nice little bit of an uptrend prior to its earnings, but then it hit a big dump and then now it's kind of crawling back up. It looks like it might be setting itself up for a bullish run spike back up into the earnings. Not a lot going on with Twilio, at least comparatively to others, but I do believe that we'll see a beat on this again, yet again, because it does look like it's setting itself up for that, at least on a technical standpoint. I don't really watch Twilio too much. I don't have a whole lot of input on them. We're going to hop into the next one here. Google seems like it's setting itself up for a potential pop, but it is running a little bit too hot into the earnings here. Looks like it might actually spike ahead of the earnings, and then when the earnings actually come, it's probably going to be hitting near that double top there, and how that's going to hold, I don't know. Really not the safest play at the moment, and Google is kind of a volatile company. I feel that we might see a little bit of maybe a sideways earnings. I don't think it's going to crash necessarily, especially comparative to its previous earnings before the last earnings it reported that wasn't so hot. Then this following one didn't really create much of a buzz. But we're going to hop into the next one here. Microsoft has been kind of flatlining the past week. Looks like it's setting itself up for a nice technical bounce on a year to date and on a year and a multi year. It doesn't look like it's breaking down anytime soon. My guess is we're going to see a beat on Microsoft. There's a lot of excitement with augmented reality and VR and stuff like that with Snap's recent beat in earnings. So it would not surprise me to see a big run up back up, testing its all time highs before the end of the week here coming up. Microsoft didn't beat their earnings last time, so it's looking like it's a nice setup for a run into said earnings and then a big bump up. But we'll see how that goes. AMD is an iffy one here, but on the yearly and multi-year and all that stuff, it doesn't look like it's very sturdy at this point. I don't know if this is going to be the catalyst that actually finally knocks it back down a little bit to a more realistic value, but I feel that it might actually end up beating the earnings again this time around. The setup is very nice technically. How it will progress into earnings, I guess we'll see. I'm personally not going to be playing this one. Options on it aren't the best unless it makes a big move up or down. Fastly here is cloud computing. It's had a nice little uptrend going into 2020, but it seems to be struggling to go too much beyond that. If Fastly does not beat the earnings this time, it's not going to end very well for them. It could be dropping down to the 30s or 40s. They've been getting a lot of bashing lately, and conveniently, it's trending down significantly since that bashing prior to their earnings. So a lot of people aren't expecting the best earnings. So if there's some kind of surprise on it, it might make a nice spike back up. Technically speaking, any bit lower than where it's currently sitting at is not going to end well for Fastly. I'm personally more on the bullish side because a lot of media outlets seem to be quite hostile towards this company, regardless of other companies like Snow, which are still pushing up higher despite no real net profits, and they're also a cloud computing company. We got Shopify here. Shopify has been kind of trending down and then a little bit of a flat line. Now it's kind of pushing back up towards the earnings. Does look like a nice technical setup that it's going to potentially break out a little bit higher in there. Shopify is a pretty massive company at this point. It's been around for many, many years. If you guys aren't familiar, it's like if you're using eBay or Amazon, but this is more seller storefronts that are more personalized, I guess. There isn't too much of a significant difference in that. A lot of drop shippers and a lot of other people like to utilize this type of company, and they charge a membership monthly to utilize this service. So it's spiking up like this in 2020 does not surprise me. Is this value sustainable? Probably not, but I don't think this is going to be the quarter that it breaks down. Could be wrong on that. I'm personally a little bit on the more bullish side than the bearish side, at least for this quarter. I feel that coming into next year, it's not going to have the best quarter. And yeah, Twitter here. Twitter technically has been bearish for quite a while here. It finally broke out above its little triple top here that was struggling above throughout the last couple weeks here. You could see it kind of tapered off after it hit that, and then it ran back up a little bit higher. But this is not a very bullish setup for going into its earnings here. Last time it didn't beat. I feel that it's actually going to crumble yet again. If it beats, that's great. This is a similar setup to Snap, where Snap looked like it wasn't, and then it broke out higher. I'd be more on the bearish side than the bullish side, but that's just my opinion. You got Spot here. Spot here is making a nice little bit of a run up prior to its earnings. Uh, on the weekly, it looks like it might run a little bit more and then, go in the multi-month and the yearly and all that. Looks like it's setting itself up for a bearish dump. It would not surprise me. Spotify is kind of like a one-trick pony. I don't think it's going to sustain this valuation into next year. I'd say we might see 150s, 200s. Spotify is just music. There isn't a lot of inherent uniqueness to that company. They have a lot of promising contracts and things like that, so I don't think it's going to go bankrupt, but I don't think it's going to make that great of a beat. And if it's not this earnings, it's going to be the next one into the early 2021 quarter. We got Apple here. Apple's kind of a little bit angry at. They've been kind of flatlining for me. I thought they'd have a little bit more of a run up comparative to the other tech, but the bullish setup, it's looking like a very nice bullish flag coming into its earnings here. Would not surprise me if Apple beats. Apple usually beats most of the time, so the fact that it's trending down, and if it continues to trend down even lower, it's going to make it a very good opportunity play for the earnings coming up on the 29th. Apple's had its new phones. Apple's had all those new services that it came out with. I still think they're going to beat. It's just not going to be like a super amazing beat. It doesn't seem like they're too excited, at least on the up and down, for how little it's moving, that it's kind of consolidating, but we'll see how that progresses. I'm more on the bullish side for Apple than bearish. You got Amazon here. Amazon's kind of subjective, kind of depends what you feel, how like Prime Day did and how the future into the next quarter is going to be. Obviously, Amazon's not going to be going bankrupt in the next year. If anything, this has probably been one of its best quarters ever. So I suspect that we're going to see a beat on this. So if we see a bit of a downtrend even more than it's already been doing, uh, don't be surprised if it beats and it beats big, because this is one of the most 10 of years that Amazon's ever going to have, because everybody's at home, everybody's through that pandemic related stuff there. The only thing I could see Amazon doing, if anything, is testing. It's literal all-time high in the last year, because there's nothing really inherently bearish about Amazon. Amazon's didn't have the best Prime Day, but you got to remember that Black Friday and all these other holidays that usually are might be shopped in person or whatever, all of that kind of stuff's going to be completely online this year. You might have a little bit of a trickle down where some people are still doing in-person store events or whatever, but Amazon is going to get more attention, more market share, just from the fact that everybody's going to be at home trying to buy online rather than in person for this upcoming holiday season. You got November and December, etc. So you should see a bullish guidance for into the end of the year. My guess is it's going to get hit harder coming into the next quarter, so that's something to keep in mind. I'd personally look to play it in a bullish aspect rather than a bearish. The setup is just too perfect. Would not surprise me to see 3,300, 3,400 plus into the end of the week upcoming here because of the earnings solely. So I would look that one out, and I'd keep a very close eye on Amazon. They've been bashing it a lot recently, which makes me even think it's even more bullish rather than bearish. When a lot of media outlets are negative, that's usually a good sign. They did beat last time. Not the best beat, but a beat in good guidance. They do beat a lot, obviously, because they're billions of dollars of revenue each and every year, pretty much here. And then, of course, you got Facebook. Facebook had that Batman signal, a little bit of a crash here. it's kind of running a little bit too hot for my likings into the earnings, making me think that the earnings are not going to be so hot. A lot of people are going to be all hopeful with a snap earnings and everything. So a lot of this movement might be moving based on that excitement so that when Facebook actually gets here, the earnings are going to be kind of disappointing and likely going to end up crashing the stock. But that's just, my opinion on that. The earnings are going to be good, but by the time the earnings actually come out, that move might already be priced in. And we got Boeing here. Boeing's been kind of on a sideways choppy last month. Hasn't did a whole lot, but in my opinion, it's setting up for a massive bull flag for its earnings. Its earnings didn't do so hot in the last couple quarters, so we'll see how this progresses. But if we see a nice big spike here coming into the earnings here, then you're going to see a lot of promise on defense ETF. You're going to see promise on jets. Jets tends to move with airlines and defense and everything. I see promise in Boeing. Boeing has a lot going for it into the upcoming weeks, months, years. Fundamentally, you could think, well, a lot of places are shut down, planes aren't flying as much, so on and so forth. But you got to keep that in mind that if that guidance is this bad now, then any promise and guidance for into the future for airlines and things like that is going to make Boeing move rather significantly. We got stimulus upcoming too, so I see a lot of promise in Boeing into the future. Whether this is going to be the quarter that it has its magnificent earnings or its magnificent guidance, I don't know about that, but it's either going to be this quarter or the next quarter. So it's definitely one to watch. The setup technically looks bullish to me, but it's been kind of on a downtrend. So I guess it's kind of hard to read if this is just a long-term bullish or if it's getting ready to break down. But I personally like the setup for an earnings. As you can see here, the pattern is kind of similar over and over again. And this has been simmering for quite a while, many months since back in June, where it hasn't did a whole lot since then, other than kind of taper off and bleed out a little bit. But I see promise into it. It didn't beat its earnings last time, so you're also going into that concept as well. Fiverr is an interesting one. Fiverr has been around for quite a long time, only recently IPO'd, and most of its value, unfortunately, came in the year of 2020, making me think that if this is not the bearish quarter for Fiverr, it's going to be the next one. Technically speaking, I would look at a likely dump on this. I don't know if it's going to be this quarter or next. I'm thinking it's more likely going to be next. This one's probably going to be more sideways, but based on its current uptrend, I would be more on a bearish side than a bullish side for pretty much any future movement. They're trading at 180 plus a share. They're going very hot into the earnings here. This isn't exactly or sorry, 160-ish it looks like now, or 50-ish. But regardless, they're not doing the best despite what the appearance look like. It's more of like a market share game in Fiverr because there isn't a whole lot of specifically marketplace setups for freelancers and things like that are IPO'd on the market currently. So all the market share tends to just kind of push into Fiverr. The most important thing to recognize here is their revenue is $49.32 million. That is not very much for what they're trading at. My guess is we're going to see under $100 a share by early next year. And yeah, I mentioned Jets and Defon a little bit earlier. Jets and Defon are airline and ETF stocks. So if you're watching Boeing or whatever, if you're watching anything in those particular sectors, you should have nice little bits of a boost up here coming into the end of the week. We'll see how all of that progresses. Once again, if there's any earnings that you want to watch particularly, feel free to mention them in the comments below and what you feel is promising about them. I think I've covered pretty much everyone that I think are worth mentioning in this video. But some, highlighted or recommended plays are, BP might be a little bit of a mover with oil and fluctuations here going into the end of the year with seasonal bullishness. You got eBay here. eBay should be promising potentially. I think we're going to see a little bit of a mixed earnings because I feel it got a little bit of an over guidance the last time. You got Visa that should be a little bit of a watch. Could be a bit of a volatile play here. You got Etsy and you got Pinterest. Etsy should be an interesting one. It's a unique market share play. Uh, Not a lot of other ones that I'm really all that excited about that I feel you're going to see much movement on. Some of these other ones, they might be bullish, but they're not exactly bullish for, playing earnings on them with options. So, but this is all just my opinion. Once again, leave in the comments below what you feel are bullish, bearish, what have you, what you feel about my input on these particular tickers. And I think that's about it for this video, guys. So thanks for listening in and have a wonderful day.